Released by Square in 1995 on the Super Nintendo and later ported to multiple platforms, Chrono Trigger would be a sci-fi fantasy time-traveling adventure. The game was a product of many successful talents coming together, dubbed the Dream Team, such as directors Takashi Tokita, who helped make Final Fantasy IV and would later direct Parasite Eve, Yoshinori Kitase, who would later direct Final Fantasy VII, 8, and 10, and Akihiko Matsui, who would work on the battle system for many Final Fantasy and Saga games. The game was written by Masato Kato, who would later write Xenogears, Chrono Cross, and Final Fantasy XI, and composed by Yasunori Mitsuda, who also composed the Shadow Hearts and Xenoblade series, with some contribution by famed Final Fantasy composer Nobuo Uematsu. The game was designed by Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, Yuji Horii, the creator of Dragon Quest, and famed manga artist Akira Toriyama, as the game was originally conceived in 1992, and Square originally intended to release the game as part of the Mana franchise. For story, the game features a young swordsman named Crono, alongside 6 other recruitable characters, though only 3 are ever fielded at a time. For gameplay, the game utilizes turn-based battles with an active time element to it, where character turns are on a cooldown timer before they make their choice, while enemies can still move around the battlefield. Every character has access to elemental magic and special moves called techs, many of which can be combined with 1 or 2 other select characters to produce stronger moves. The game features an overworld map, multiple minigames, animated sprites, and multiple side quests and optional areas. The world is densely populated with interactive items and enemies that appear on the overworld where they may be encountered or avoided, though battles are conducted in the same space and not in separate battle scenarios. The game also has a New Game Plus, retaining the player's levels, equipment, and abilities, which is needed to explore every ending across multiple playthroughs. A later PlayStation port would add a few anime cutscenes across the game, while the later Nintendo DS port would include these additions, and add additional quests and dungeons, extra bosses, and a new epilogue that better connects this game to Chrono Cross. The story only gets larger from here, so let's cut it down to size with a RECAPitation. As the game begins, we meet a young man named Crono living in the city of Truce, as he is woken up and told his childhood friend and accomplished inventor Luca wants to show him her new invention at the Millennium Fair being held today to mark the year 1000 AD. Traveling to Lean Square, he runs into a girl and helps pick up her drop pendant as she thanks him and asks if he can show her around the festival as a favor. Introducing herself as Marl, they enjoy the festival, collecting silver points from the various games and activities. They find Luca showing off her newest invention, a teleporter, as she uses Chrono to show off its effectiveness. Marl eagerly wants to try the machine next, though when they begin the process, her pendant begins to glow strangely and a portal now opens up. Her pendant stays behind as Marl herself is thrown into the portal as it closes behind her, leaving her to an unknown fate. Luca cannot help but feel she's seen Marl from somewhere, but Chrono instead picks up her pendant and is intent on going after her. Agreeing, Luca wishes him good luck, and as she repeats the process, another portal indeed opens up and Chrono is sent inside. He finds himself outside the kingdom of Guardia, but something is off, as the kingdom is battling the forces of someone named Magus, and their missing Queen Lean was last seen near a cathedral to the west, though they also hear she's been found in the nearby woods. Chrono visits Guardia Castle to learn more, and is soon met by the Queen who claims Chrono is her friend, though there are some like the Chancellor who are not convinced. Behind closed doors, she reveals herself to be Marl, though because of their uncanny resemblance, everyone thinks she is the Queen, but suddenly she reels over in pain and vanishes right before him. As he leaves, he's met by Luca who decided to follow and help. When she hears about Marl, she confirms her suspicion that Marl is actually Princess Nadia, and they are currently in the past of 600 AD, where they mistook her for her ancestor Queen Lean. According to history, the Queen was supposed to have been saved, but since Marl was saved instead, the real Queen was never saved, and thus never had descendants leading to Marl. However, if they save the real Queen quickly, then the timeline can be corrected as they know it. Investigating the cathedral, they find the Queen's hairpin and learn it's just a front for monsters. They are saved by a sword-wielding frogman who is okay with just being referred to as simply Frog, who says he is here only to rescue the Queen. They find the shady Chancellor turns out to be the monster in charge here and destroy him, freeing the Queen. They both thank the group for their effort and free the real Chancellor who was also kidnapped by the monsters here. When they return, the Chancellor insists on building a new criminal justice system to punish for crimes like this, and Frog takes his leave, embarrassed at allowing the Queen to be captured in the first place. Checking back to where Marl disappeared, they find her restored back to normal where she thanks them and apologizes for hiding her identity. Making haste, Luca brings them to a portal where she uses the gate key she constructed to more safely open and use these portals to travel to specific times and places, though she's not sure why the portals exist to begin with. Back in their normal time of 1000 AD, Luca breaks off and Chrono escorts Marl home, but upon doing so, the modern-day Chancellor accuses Chrono of abducting the princess. He is put on trial immediately, though the shady Chancellor rigs an execution for him in 3 days regardless. Not accepting this, Crono baits the guards and breaks out of his cell, though Luca arrives with the same idea in mind. Guardia forces try to catch them as Marle does her best to help, but the king and chancellor completely disregard her. Frustrated at this, she chooses to join the group and together they flee to the woods, where they are surprised to find another gate. Marle insists they use it to escape while Luca warns they don't know where it leads, but with nowhere else to run, the group opens the gate anyway and jump in. Finding themselves in a ruined yet advanced civilization, they find the people here destitute, hungry, and fearful of the mutant and robot threats that surround them. The leader of one community is an old man named Doan, who says there is a storage of food alongside a massive computer, but the robots there prevent them from getting to it. Choosing to help, the group destroys the massive security robot in the way, but unfortunately finds the food stores have been compromised and rotted away. They do find a dead man clutching some seeds and take those with them, and also find the computer here still operational. Luca investigates and finds another gate nearby, but they also find a record of an event called the Day of Lavos dated 1999 AD. Watching it, they see a massive crater open up in a flourishing world, and some sort of massive monster rise up and demolish everything easily. Seeing such a dismal fate for their world at the hands of something called Lavos, Marle refuses to accept things as they are, and thinks they can go back in time and change things just like they did to save her. Luca reluctantly agrees, and Marle is now determined to find out as much as they can about Lavos first, starting with their own time period. As they return to Doan, they hand him the seeds they found, encouraging them to start growing them now, and believing in their vibrant confidence, Doan gives them the keys to his old jet bike nearby. As they find the jet bike, they are challenged to a race by a confident and popular robot named Johnny. Beating him, they make it to the dome where the gate is supposed to be. Within, they find an amazing humanoid robot but in terrible shape, though Luca believes she can fix it. Marle warns her it may attack them like the others, but Luca insists robots cannot be evil since they follow the programming of humans, and so she'll make sure this one will help. Finding they cannot open the doors around here anyway, they rest while Luca works on the robot. Empowering it up, it thanks them for the repair and greets them all as Unit R66Y. Choosing to name him Robo instead, they ask him what happened to all the humans here, and confused, Robo confirms there once were many humans and robots living here, but unsure of what has happened to wipe them out. He also mentions the power is out here so none of the doors will open, so they need to head to the nearby generator first. Succeeding, they trigger an alarm that deploys a group of robots that look like Robo onto them, and Robo is pleased to recognize them as some of those manufactured alongside him. However, they knock him away, declaring he has been tampered with and is now defective. His original mission was to destroy all intruders, and they all gang up on him, beat him up, and toss him away to be scrapped, as the group retaliates and destroys his R-Series brothers. Afterwards, they drag Robo's body back to Luca, and as she works on him, Robo learns the group plans to prevent the destruction of this world by Lavos, but honestly doesn't know how far they can get with that idea. After he's fixed, Robo declares he wants to go with the group, since there's nothing for him here and he wants to give the planet a second chance. Opening the portal, the four of them travel back to their original time of 1000 AD, but for some reason they end up in a strange isolated alleyway. There is an old man dozing off who wakes up and explains this is the end of time where all lost travelers in time wind up. He asks when they come from, and three of them say 1000 AD while Robo states 2300 AD, and he explains the conservation of time theorem states when four or more beings step into a time warp, they end up at the space-time coordinates of least resistance, which is here. He also mentions disturbances in the space-time continuum have been increasing recently, and more people have been ending up here, wondering what could be having such a powerful effect on the fabric of time. So, in short, only three of them can travel across time, while anyone else can stay here in the meanwhile, but any gate they use, they can always use to come here. He also introduces them to Specchio, the Master of War, who has seen countless battles. As Specchio points out, his appearance will always be a reflection of the party's own strength, so if he looks weak or strong, it's only because they are weak or strong. He tells them that long ago there was a kingdom abundant with magic, but when people began to abuse it, only assigned wizards were then allowed to use it going forward. But all magic needs is strength of the heart, which they all have, and so he awakens in each of them the ability to use magic, except for Robo, who has technology in place of a heart. Returning back to their era, they find the gate back leads to someone's closet, and they find themselves in Medina Village, which was apparently founded by their ancestors, the Mystics, after they lost their war with the humans 400 years ago. Going to the town square, they find the Mystics there revering a statue to someone named Magus, who commanded the Mystics in the war, and claiming his creation Lavos will awaken and destroy the humans. They learn of an odd man at the edge of town, and visiting, find a weaponsmith named Melchior, and hear that Magus was to use Lavos 400 years ago. Luca thinks to travel back to 600 AD and find Magus then, and knows they can use the Fairgrounds Gate to get there. Heading back to Truce, Crono and Luca each check in with their parents, as Luca's father continues inventing while her mother still resents it, having lost use of her legs due to an accident long ago. Now heading back to 600 AD, the group travels to the front lines of the kingdom's war against Magus, finding a mystic named Ozzy leading the charge to break the humans' last line of defense. A general of Magus' forces, he raises the dead of the humans to fuel his own army, but the group manages to still push him back. They learn the king has been injured, and find the famed sword Masamune, defeating the two spirits that protect it, as they return within the sword and allow the party to claim them, though the blade is broken for now. They also encounter a boy in the town of Pore named Tada, who has been mistaken for a legendary hero ever since he picked up Frog's hero medal that he dropped in a tavern, though he returns it to the party. Finding Frog, he is alarmed to hear the king is injured, but without the Masamune, they cannot fight Magus, and he feels he is not fit to wield himself. As it turns out, Frog has the broken hilt of Masamune, and inscribed on it is Melchior, the same name as the weaponsmith they encountered. As they take the parts back to Melchior, they ask who he really is that his name is on such a legendary blade. He says it's a long story, but he can mend the blade if they find some dreamstone, which is what the sword is made from. Unfortunately, it no longer exists, as it was a unique red stone used as currency long ago, but checking the end of time, the party finds they can actually travel to 65 million BC, and decide to check it out. Arriving, they encounter a half-human, half-dinosaur race they have never heard of before called Reptites. They find themselves quickly overwhelmed, but a strong blonde woman suddenly comes in and easily thins the numbers for them. She is impressed by the group's strength and introduces herself as Ayla. She doesn't understand most of what they say when they talk of the future and the Dreamstone, but invites them to her village to eat and check out the rocks they have there anyway. As they feast, Ayla is the leader of her village, and she tells them she is currently struggling to fight the Reptites led by the cunning Azala. She shows them her red rock, which is actually Dreamstone, but this rock is also a sign of power, so as the village's strongest, it's hers. She offers that he can challenge her to a drinking contest for it, and Crono agrees, doing his best. The next day, Crono and group can't remember what else happened that night, but they are surprised to find themselves robbed of the gate key, and Reptite tracks are everywhere around the village. Ayla is eager to bring the fight to the Reptites as the group enters their lair, beat past the Saurians there, and confront Azala. Withdrawing for now, he tosses them back their gate key and swears this isn't over. With a dreamstone from Ayla, the group parts ways for now, and they return to Melchior to fix the Masamune. Presenting the sword to Frog, he doesn't immediately accept it, as instead he reflects that night on the past, when the heroic knight Cyrus left to challenge the Frog King for his badge of courage, alongside his childhood friend, Glenn. Cyrus would win the day and even earn the Masamune himself, but one day he would cross blades with Ozzy and the leader of the Mystics, Magus. During their duel, Glenn would be cut down, and the Masamune broken in half. Cyrus tried to hold off Magus so Glenn could escape, but he was easily struck down and burned into nothing. Choosing to have fun with the weak Glenn, Magus instead cursed him into the form of a frogman, and for the 10 years since, Frog has mourned that day, yet still sticking to his duty of queen and country. The next day, he tells the party even if they fail, he will take them to Magus' lair. As they travel, Frog reflects that he always looked up to his friend as a brave warrior like many others did, but Cyrus always recognized Glenn's superior swordsmanship despite his softer heart. Since that fateful day 10 years ago, all he had was Cyrus's hero medal and his own memories of him, but today he is finally ready to move forward. Proclaiming himself and his will, he draws the Masamune, whose immense power accepts him. Turning about, Frog brings down the power with a heavy slice, cleaving open the cliffside entrance and revealing the way forward. Finding themselves soon before Magus' lair, they are in awe of the intimidating castle, and steeling themselves, enter within. Their mind is playing tricks on them as forms of their loved ones walk before them, as Ozzy reveals himself saying they won't make it to Magus until they defeat the 100 beasts of this castle. Clashing blades with the Swordmaster General Slash and outmatching the effeminate Flea the Magician, they evade and reverse Ozzy's many traps as the three generals all fall. Stepping into Magus' chamber, a black wind howls, and dark fires dimly light and surround the spell circle Magus is within, as he turns to mock Frog and the Masamune, accepting his challenge of battle. Magus is a fearsomely powerful mage, but the Masamune cuts past his magic barrier, and the group beats down the leader of the Mystics. Just then, a strange distortion occurs behind Magus, as even he panics upon Lavos waking up earlier than expected. They point out Lavos is supposed to be born now, but Magus corrects them, explaining he was only summoning him here, as Lavos has actually been lurking deep beneath the earth, absorbing the energy of the land and gathering strength for ages. A huge gravity well opens up, and Magus curses the group for their meddling, as an unstable gate swallows them all up and an alien roar screeches around them. The next thing he knows, Crono is being waken up by his wife, Marl, as she urges him to find a job and quit mooching money off her dad. However, waking up from that strangely realistic dream, Crono actually finds himself back at the prehistory era, as he is woken up by Ayla who rescued them all. They don't see Magus anywhere, as she struggles to unite the clans against the reptile threat, who don't want to die against the race that has dominated the world long before humans. Helping her in her endeavor, they fly to Tyranno Lair, the base of the reptiles, though something red glints in the sky. Inside, they free the captured human warriors, including Kino, the man Ayla likes the most despite him being weaker than her, and she says that should this fail, Kino needs to lead the village. Kino helps as much as he can as he too cares for Ayla, and moving on, the group faces down Azala on his throne, and the leaders of both races have finally come to a head. As Azala shows off his trump card, Tyranno, he sees the red star in the distance and beckons it to keep falling, now turning his attention to the group. He recognizes his kind may be fated to perish, but even then he has no intention of going quietly, and still intends to make the apes extinct before him. Tipping the scales of history, Crono and crew secure a future for mankind, shocking Azala that his longer standing and stronger civilization could be toppled so easily. Defeated, he cries out that the reptiles went down fighting, and Ayla recognizes this, but a light in the sky draws all of their attention. Azala explains that fire will soon fall from the sky, scorching the earth and ushering in an ice age. Ayla suddenly declares this Lavos, as La means fire and Vos means big, as Lavos indeed comes hurtling down to earth, impacting any minute now. Kino now swoops in to fly them out of danger, as Ayla offers to help Azala out as well. He refuses, declaring the powers that be have spoken and the reptiles have no future, as Lavos strikes Tyranno Castle, wiping it off the face of the planet, and the group observes Lavos is actually a calamity that descended to this world. The group considers fighting Lavos since it only just arrived, but finds Lavos has actually already dug underneath the Earth's crust and left behind a time gate. They wonder if Lavos has been the source of all the gates and disturbances all along, and open the gate anyway to see where it leads. Traveling in, they find themselves in 12,000 BC, the Dark Ages, where the world is still frozen over, but they find curious buildings housing advanced magic portals. They are transported to a magical city in the clouds, where the people continually develop magic and live luxurious lifestyles. All this was thanks to the push for magic advancement by Queen Zeal, who has garnered the love of her people. They run into a small quiet boy who states that a black wind howls, which seems familiar, as he ominously mentions someone in the group is going to die soon without explaining more. The queen herself has multiple magical experiments going on, and she has two children, the magically prodigious daughter, Shala, and the quiet stepson they met earlier, Janus, who is rumored to be inept with magic. There are also three wise men about, the gurus of life, time, and reason. However, their idyllic life is not for everyone, as only those with magic can live in Zeal as an enlightened one, as those without magic live on the cold surface as the earthbound ones. In addition, everything used to be powered by an object called a sunstone, but they have since found a new power source. There is also something called the Ocean Palace currently under construction, meant to be a new symbol of the Queen's power, alongside the giant airplane one of the gurus Balthazar built. As they check out the flying fortress, Blackbird, a man named Dalton steps out, saying the group was actually expected, as their prophet foresaw their arrival and the trouble they would cause, but curiously just leaves while laughing. They visit Queen Zeal's palace proper, where the group learns the queen is actually using the power of Lavos somehow, and all three of the gurus have left despite their contributions to Zeal. Rumor goes that Gaspar, Guru of Time, is still working on some deserted island on something called a time egg or Chrono Trigger. They visit the Mammon machine, which is harvesting power from Lavos, and the plan goes to move it to the Ocean Palace closer to Lavos so it can siphon even more energy. All this appears to be for the purpose of achieving eternal life in youth, though there are whispers that once the machine was completed, the queen took a dark turn and now anyone that opposes her, no matter their position, simply disappears. Some wonder if Melchior, who opposed the queen and has also vanished, has met such a fate, as it was the three gurus who made the Mammon machine from the royal family's Red Rock. Exploring more, they walk in on Janus talking to his sister Shala, expressing his concern about a black wind, and she tells him she feels it too, and gives him an amulet that should something happen, he'll be protected. Janus then complains about the sudden change of their mother, and Shala understands, but still cannot refuse aiding their mother. At this time, Shala is summoned to the Ocean Palace by the queen, and she leaves immediately. Following her, they find the mysterious seals they have encountered across many ages are unlocked by Shala's pendant, yet Marl's own pendant, though identical, strangely does not work, and it may be due to a power difference. Thinking to use the immense energy of the Mammon machine, Marl's pendant now glows with an awesome power and unseals the door too, confirming it's also made of the Guru's rock. They enter Queen Zeal's throne room, where Dalton and a mysterious robed figure also wait. The robed figure informs the queen Crono's group is the one he warned her about, and she orders Dalton to deal with them. He summons a golem to kill them, and when that fails, traps the group behind a pyramid barrier. The queen then laughs that she won't kill them and intends to have fun with them until they beg for death, exposing her cruel side. Afterwards, while in prison, they are visited by Shala and Janice, and Shala intends to free them, and Janice doesn't see the point. Shala feels they can help them find the gurus, and when she releases them, tells them to quickly escape, and also find Melchior on the surface. Unfortunately, the Prophet interrupts them, intending to end the group himself, but when Shala and Janice both step in to prevent that, the Prophet pauses and gives up on it. Instead, he asks the party how they came here at all, and they show him the time gate they used. He now tells them to enter and tell Shala to close the gate behind them, else he'll really kill them, and complying, the group leaves, and Shala seals the gate within a powerful barrier. As the group returns to the prehistoric era, they find the actions of the Prophet awfully suspicious, but for now, remember they now have a way to unlock the many seals they have found so far. Thinking the key to stopping Lavos is likely in that era, they don't give up on finding another way in, but first, talk to Gaspar at the end of time. He notes they have been to Zeal, and says even though that gate is closed, there are other ways of traveling through time. He remembers a friend of his was working on a device called the Wings of Time, but has gone a bit mad in his isolation and research. Pointed towards the future, they find a sealed door, and behind it, messages left behind by Balthazar, the Guru of Reason, once from Zeal. He explains a great disaster in Zeal flung him into this era, where he was surprised to find Lavos still existed. He confirms Lavos fell from space eons ago, and has since burrowed to the world's core, consuming the planet's energy to grow stronger. Lavos once disappeared briefly when he was summoned by a wizard in 600 AD, and it was in 1999 that Lavos claimed the area high atop Death Peak, replicating itself like the parasite it was. Sensing his sanity slipping, he safeguarded his data and ultimate creation, stating that only by mastering time does one stand a chance against Lavos. Opening the door beyond, the group sees Balthazar's Wings of Time is actually a time-traveling ship. To the group's surprise, a creature called Anu then speaks to them, introducing itself as Balthazar, or at least the memories he copied onto this creature, as it explains to them how to pilot the ship, now named the Epilogue. With renewed hope and a second chance at stopping the apocalypse, the group sets their destination on the Dark Ages again. Landing on the surface, they pass by the Earthbound ones, and hear that the Guru of Life claimed Janice actually has stronger powers than even Shala, but merely hides it. Following Shala's request, they also find the place where the Guru of Life himself has been imprisoned, and freeing him, Melchior, the same one as the weaponsmith they met in their time, comes out, though relatively speaking, this is the first time he meets them. He thanks them, but asks for an update on Zeal, acknowledging the more energy the Mammoth Machine absorbs, the more mad the Queen will become. He also mentions that bringing the Mammoth Machine closer will likely wake up Lavos, spelling disaster for everyone. At this time, Shala and Janice come in, announcing the Ocean Palace has been completed, but she refuses to operate the Mammoth Machine any longer. Since she is the only one who can, she urges them to stop the Queen with this window. Dalton now barges in, here to collect the children, blowing away Melchior, knocking out Shala, knocking away Janice, and getting away. More determined now to stop the Queen, Crono and group prepare to head out, as Melchior hands them a ruby knife made from the same material as the Mammoth Machine, and can destroy it. Heading back to Zeal Palace, they are too late to catch the Queen there, but instead find a disgruntled Dalton on guard duty. They clash, and while the group defeats him, just before he's struck down, Dalton opens up a gate of his own and escapes. Following him in, it turns out to lead straight to the Ocean Palace, as Queen Zeal is forcing Shala to maximize the Mammoth Machine's power. As the party rushes there, they encounter Masa in this era, who reveals the ancient red rock has been passed down from the ages, being made into a magic pendant and knife, in which he and his brother inhabit. Dalton once again tries and fails to defeat the party, but is interrupted as Lavos' energy is felt throughout the palace now, and Dalton exclaims all his work will be in vain if he dies before becoming immortal. He moves ahead as the party is close behind him, soon coming face to face with the Queen. Unstable energy courses all around the room, as Crono wastes no time using the ruby dagger on the Mammoth Machine. Masa and Mune guide the blade true, as when it strikes the machine, the clash of energy reforms the dagger into the legendary blade Masamune. Unfortunately, the sword alone does not stop the machine from going haywire, as a screeching roar now echoes out as Lavos awakens and pulls the group into a separate space to meet personally. The massive parasite easily beats down the group, and stepping in, the Prophet now reveals himself to be Magus all along, who has been waiting for his chance to destroy Lavos at all costs. The Queen scoffs at his defiance, jumping on top of Lavos and ready to use its power to end them all. Lavos begins quickly draining Magus of his power, bringing him to his knees, but making a decisive strike, he is distraught to see even that did nothing to the alien. As Lavos begins to suck in Shala and Magus, a battered but not beaten Crono blocks the attempt and tries to fight Lavos on his own. Focusing on the swordsman, Crono cannot guard against such power and is vaporized in a single attack, with nothing but Marl's pendant surviving the overwhelming energy. Returned back to the palace, the entire place is still coming down, and Shala moves to use the rest of her pendant's energy to save them, asking them not to hate the queen or Zeal despite all this. Outside, Lavos now surfaces, raining down destruction and annihilating the kingdom of Zeal, wiping out its citizens and structures in a single blast. As the giant land masses fall, the ensuing tidal waves wash over and wipe out most of the surface dwellers as well, leaving only a few islands. When the group wakes up, they are saved by the Earthbound Elder, who confirms no one else was found. He hands them back the pendant Crono had on him, as the group comes to grips with the fact that Crono is dead. As the surviving Enlightened ones and Earthbound ones now must live together with no distinction, Dalton now arrives with his forces he kept to the side, declaring himself king of the new surviving world. He announces to the party he's taking their strange ship and blows them away, capturing them all. The party wakes up, stripped of all their equipment, and are surprised to find themselves on the flying fortress Blackbird that Dalton and his forces used to escape the disaster. Escaping their cell, they first get their equipment back and spy on Dalton as he has his crew modify the Epilogue with flight capabilities in order to be his personal air throne. Once completed, he flies out and fires at the group with the new weapons installed on it as they escape among the ship. Making a bold leap, the group rushes down Dalton on the wings of Epilogue and defeat him again, though a spell he misfires ends up snaring him in a portal, sending him to an unknown dimension. As the group regains control of Epilogue, they find Dalton has redone some of the controls, accidentally firing upon the Blackbird with Epilogue's weaponry and blowing it out of the sky. The survivors below cheer for the downing of Dalton, as they prepare to search for Crono now and give hope to the survivors of the disaster. Unexpectedly, Magus approaches them, but doesn't want to fight, instead confirming he was once Prince Janus of Zeal, though he has once again seen his home destroyed. He reveals that the three gurus were sent to unknown times thanks to time gates opened by Lavos, and he too was swept up in that as a child. Melchior would be sent to the Middle Ages, Balthazar to the future, and Gaspar to the end of time. He would also end up in the Middle Ages, but found immediately by Ozzy. Since then, he's thought of nothing but trying to destroy Lavos, and when they interrupted him in his castle, he was in the middle of summoning Lavos so he could destroy it himself, not use it to destroy humanity. He finds it ironic when he was drawn into another portal, he would end up here, and despite coming from a future time, would still be unprepared. He accepts that Lavos is unstoppable and advises them to give up too, else they end up dead like Crono. This riles up the group, but they choose not to fight, as it wouldn't solve anything. As they leave, Magus offers to join them in their quest, as it just so happens he may know of a way to bring back Crono. More specifically, Gaspar knows how to restore lost or misplaced time streams, and forming an uneasy alliance, Magus joins the group. Hopping into the Epilogue to travel now, they find an enormous gate from Lavos is interfering with their space-time compass, as the ruined ocean palace now rises from the sea as the Black Omen, reformed and empowered by Lavos. Returning to the end of time, Gaspar is caught up on events, and remarks that everyone wishes they could bring loved ones back. Still, for the friends fighting Lavos, he decides to hand them his time egg, calling it a Chrono Trigger, as it is pure potential that can have a powerful effect on time. It's not a guarantee, but getting back Crono is one such potential, but he advises them to talk to Balthazar on how to hatch it. Balthazar's memories reply that on Death Peak they can find the power to restore life, but in order to activate this power, the deceased must be of importance to the space-time continuum, and they must have a clone of that person. Fortunately, he happens to know of a magician that excels in making clones, Beckler from the Millennia Fair. Getting a lifelike Chrono doll, they begin their climb of Death Peak, surprised and concerned to find Lavos already creating new spawn to further leech onto the planet. Reaching the peak, Marl and the group now send their thoughts and prayers to the time egg of Crono, attempting to pull his potential possibility out of the infinite outcomes, and see the pendant is now reacting as sending energy to the time egg, which rises but suddenly shatters. An eclipse then begins to cast its shadow over the world, and in the instant of complete darkness, the group finds itself brought back to the moment of time right before Crono was annihilated. Able to manipulate this frozen moment, they swap the clone out for the real Crono, and are soon brought back to their reality. As the light of the eclipse waxes over, Crono now wakes up, but this time in the embrace of Marl, and to the relief and joy of his friends. The team finally reunited, they thank Gaspar, who jokes that they should let him into the team as well, and notes the Epilogue continues to follow them like it has a mind of its own. Ending Lavos is still their unified objective, and many options lie before them on that. Gaspar points out the singularity of encountering Lavos is separated and accessible in a bucket to the side. Otherwise, they can take the Epilogue to the day of Lavos in 1999 AD, or they may assault the Black Omen, which is somehow linked to Lavos as well. They may choose the time and place of battle, and if they would like to prepare, he mentions a list of people and places across time that he suspects will help tip the scales in their favor. Now traveling to strengthen themselves and their bonds with others, the group helps a woman in 600 AD named Fiona revitalize a major forest, and thanks to Robo staying behind to plant, cultivate, and protect the trees, they return to 1000 AD to see the efforts of his work. While the forest benefits many, Robo, as he is cleaned and repaired after 400 years of service, got to thinking that Lavos may not actually be responsible for the gates. Rather, he suspects that someone or something has wanted them to see things that way, as if they were reliving some entity's past with these specific gates. Ayla relates this to seeing one's life flash before their eyes when they die, and Robo remarks it's usually regrets of choices that person did or did not make. Marl idly asks Luca if there are any points in her life she would want to redo, but Luca pauses and quietly denies anything. Magus wonders who such an outside entity could be, as they all turn in for the night. Later, Luca wakes up and sneaks off on her own to a nearby gate, and opening it, the red gate takes her back 10 years to her own room. She finds herself just in time to witness her mother get caught in the machine her father made and fix the mistake of not being able to shut down the machine before it crushed her legs. Satisfied with creating a timeline where her mother could still walk, she leaves quietly, as when she returns, Robo remarks she has always been kind to others. Back in the Middle Ages, they also find the remnants of the Mystic Army, choosing to defeat Ozzy, Flea, and Slash once and for all, as they call out Magus as a traitor, but ultimately fall for their own traps. Stomping out the embers of war creates a more peaceful Medina village in the future where both mystics and humans now work together. In the modern day, they find Cyrus's memorial, and Frog pays his respects alongside the Masamune, and surprisingly, the spirit of Cyrus comes forth. He tells Frog he has always thought highly of him and should be proud of avenging his memory, and Frog's heart finally forgives itself, swelling with willpower and pride. Masamune responds to this mental fortitude, and with that, the Masamune blade unlocks its true power. They also find the exploits of the adventurer Toma, a man who searched for the mythical rainbow shell. Honoring his final wishes from the Middle Ages, his ghost comes out to tell them where they can find the legendary item. Traveling back to the Middle Ages, they are surprised to find the buried ruins of Tyranno lair there, with many dinosaurs, including Tyranno itself, still alive. Making sure the beasts stay extinct this time, they find the actual rainbow shell too heavy to move, and so have Guardia Castle safeguard it until the modern day as a national treasure. However, when they come to claim it, the modern day Chancellor has the king on trial for personal theft of it. Finding the castle basement also strangely overrun by monsters, they see the Chancellor is about to irrationally sentence the king to death and take over the kingdom, when Marl crashes the verdict trial to prove his innocence. This exposes the Chancellor to actually be a monster in disguise, who is also a descendant of the first monster to also disguise itself as a Chancellor, here for revenge. Destroying the monster and saving her father's life, Marl and the king take this time to talk their problems and misunderstandings out. Afterwards, the king entrusts Marl to Crono, the real Chancellor is found again, and Melchior comes in, stating he can make the finest weapons and armor from the rainbow shell, equipping the group. Traveling to the future, they discover the Sunstone completely devoid of energy, and place it in a spot to recharge in prehistory, using the discarded energy source of Zeal to power themselves up. Also in the future, they find an isolated dome wherein it is stealing humans, mass slaughtering them inside, and turning them into blue capsules. The AI behind this is one called Mother Brain, who means to create a new world where machines are the dominant race. As they seek her out, Robo runs into another robot he knows called Atropos, his female counterpart, who calls him by his original name Prometheus. She tells the group Prometheus actually had a special designation to live among humans and study them as a species, but he can rejoin the robots now and kill them. Regardless, Robo fights her back, intending to defend his friends, as Atropos figures he must have been tampered with, revealing Mother Brain has made her only more efficient at killing humans. He tells his friends he'll handle her on his own, as he duels and defeats her. Suddenly Atropos' demeanor changes, noting Mother Brain must have changed her when she reprogrammed her, but all of her vital functions are now damaged due to the battle. Back to her original self, she apologizes to Robo and gives him her ribbon accessory as a keepsake as she breaks down. Saddened by this loss, Robo and the group move ahead where they find the image of Mother Brain displayed before them, who greets them as the creator of all the RY series robots. Robo rejects her offers of reinitialization, and she mocks him for his sentiments, punishing him for how human he's become, but Robo has chosen his side, ending his creator. Now prepared and ready to take on the Black Omen, they break down its doors and find Queen Zeal still alive after all, declaring herself immortal thanks to Lavos, and summoning a mighty mutant to destroy the group. The group cuts past her army of mutants and robots, confronting her in front of the destroyed Mammon machine. She reveals the Black Omen transcends time and space, waiting for Lavos to awaken in 1999. She then battles the group, but they defeat her easily, forcing her to fuse with the Mammon machine itself as the group overcomes this and her final ascended form, ending the reign of the ruler gone mad with power. With her final breath, she calls forth Lavos to destroy the group as the Black Omen sinks into the sea, and Lavos indeed rises up prematurely from its intended apocalypse. Ready for Lavos this time, they clash with the alien creature as it mimics attacks from various foes they have defeated in the past. Triumphant in slaying the immense foe, they wonder if it's over, but they find there is still much life within it, as this was just an outer shell. Wondering how much this has impacted the end of the world, they travel to 1999 and see Lavos does still rise, and so they must put it down for good. Venturing inside, they are shocked to find the true alien form within Lavos, and learn it has absorbed the DNA of every creature that has ever lived within itself. Edging out a victory against the mighty foe, they find it still isn't over, as within this still resides the true core of Lavos still alive. They remark that it's clear the life cycle of Lavos is simply to travel to a world, consume all of its vital resources, spawn children like the ones they killed on Death Peak, and those young will migrate to other planets to repeat the process. Defending their world from the otherworldly invader that has leached off their planet in preparation for their complete slaughter, Crono, Marl, Luca, Frog, Robo, Ayla, and Magus defeat Lavos once and for all, breaking the chains of time and fate and setting their world on a new path forward. As things fade to black, the next thing he knows, Crono is home, waken up by a soldier of Guardia now, who informs him his stay of execution has been cancelled. He is brought before the king to explain his actions, but as it turns out, the king is aware the group has been out saving their future. Suddenly Doan, from the future, comes out to vouch for their deeds, giving them a future of hope. The king from the Middle Ages also thanks them for saving their kingdom and winning the war against the Mystics. Finally, Kino comes out, thanking them for defeating the Reptites and allowing humanity to survive. Luca comes out to reveal she brought them all here, and the current king explains they are all ancestors and descendants of Guardia's royal lineage, including Kino and Ayla of the past and Doan of the future. He urges Marl to go out and enjoy the festival on its last night, as tonight everyone will celebrate the group and their deeds. The Moonlight Parade begins as everyone enjoys themselves, though to decide the time has come for the group to go their separate ways to their separate times. The gates also seem weak, so it's unlikely they can ever use them again, as they each say their goodbyes. Kino and Ayla go back to prehistory, as Kino assures Marl they'll have strong children together. The king from the Middle Ages and Frog take their leave, not wishing to make it a long goodbye, though Marl gives Frog a kiss on the cheek, as Luca notes it seems appropriate between princesses and frogs. Magus now heads out, intent on searching for where Shala ended up since it wasn't on the Black Omen, and leaves without saying anything. Robo now leaves with Doan to go back to the future, as he expresses he will miss Luca, as Luca wonders what kind of future they will be discovering now that the apocalypse won't happen, and Robo assures her there will be a place for him, thanking her again for teaching him emotions. Luca now speaks of the entity they talked about that one night, and feels it must be at rest now, and thinks the Epoch should be disassembled for now. However, just then, Crono's cat and his mom soon after stumble around and step inside the gate, just as it closes. Since the gates will no longer open, the group looks to each other as they smile, knowing they have no choice but to now find them in a new adventure since they still have the Epoch. Before they leave, the king commemorates the new bell for Lean Square, naming it Nadia's Bell, though before the ceremony is over the group is already on their way. As fireworks fill the sky, the group blasts off in the Epoch, passing by the past, present, and future, spotting their friends from these eras as well, and remembering the bonds they made across time as a new adventure unfolds. Chrono Trigger has enjoyed the success of selling over 3.9 million copies worldwide. As the group is finally ready to destroy Lavos, they board the Epoch, setting a course for the apocalypse itself, 1999 AD, arriving just in time to witness Lavos erupting from beneath the earth. Determined to stop things here and now, they aim to punch through Lavos' outer shell and attack it straight at the core, sacrificing the Epoch to give them a more direct fighting chance. Once inside, they succeed in ending the threat once and for all, and end the apocalypse before it had a chance to begin. Thanks to the gates at the end of time, they return to Guardia present day to enjoy the last day of the festival in honor for the group's triumph. As the party bids farewell and each return to their respective times, Luca states she thought Lavos made the gates, but feels that's wrong, feeling there may be a greater force somewhere who wanted them to experience these events. The king now presents his daughter with a gift to commemorate this day, replacing a 400-year-old Lean Bell with the new Nadia's Bell, which will ring out in peace for years to come. Giving her the honor of mounting it, Crono helps her, though the balloons she has carry her up, and leaping up with her, Crono and Marl fly high above the fireworks lighting up the sky. Holding tight to each other, Marl and Crono gaze upon the beauty of the Moonlight Parade, remembering their journey behind them and looking forward to a new future together. Having finally avenged Crono's death at the hands of Lavos, Marl and the group succeed at ending the parasitic threat. The next thing they know, everyone wakes up at the end of time, as Gaspar mentions the gates are fading and they need to return to their own times now. Marl wishes to give one more chance at finding Crono together, but everyone is intent on returning to their own times before it's too late. Marl attends the Moonlight Parade in celebration of their deeds, but is surprised to see everyone back suddenly despite there being no gates. Luca reveals she tinkered with the telepod to turn it into a time machine and used it to find everyone again, including Gaspar, who reveals to them the time egg. Excited to have another chance to find Crono, they set off again, but as the king asks for Marl now, Luca assures her she can wait here and they won't fail. Marl gets to hang the new Nadia bell in their honor, though the balloons she has carry her up. She floats all the way to Death Peak, where she anxiously waits by its tree for the group to return. And then, from the shadows, she sees the silhouette of Crono walking towards her as she runs to meet him, glad she never gave up. Empowered by previous experience, Crono and Marl are surprised to see an unbelievable monster in their way when testing the telepod at the fair, but striking it down all the same, they know not the terrible future they just ended. As thanks, the development team for the game congratulates them on their impressive achievement and invite them to join the Dream Team as well. Returning back from rescuing Marl in the Middle Ages, Crono and Marl defend against a strange parasite named Lavos, striking it down and returning home. However, everybody strangely ribbits now, including Marl all of a sudden. Her father reveals a wedding album from the Middle Ages in which Frog actually marries Queen Lean in a quiet little church and ends up siring the royal family. All life begins with new and ends with new. After learning about the legendary hero Tada in the Middle Ages, the group wastes no time in becoming legends themselves, destroying Lavos and securing a future without the apocalypse. We now see a future in which the Bell and Lean Square still stands in the future, and Robo and Atropos enjoy a peaceful world together. Rewinding back to the Middle Ages, we see Tada, the alleged hero, was tasked to deal with the Mystic Army and defeat Magus, but when he stands before the throne room, we see the foe he challenges is none other than Crono, Marl, and Luca, laughing on the throne and preparing for battle. After getting the hero's medal back from the imposter Tada, the group feels the people need a true hero, and so rise up to defeat Lavos on their own, saving them from a dark future. The world is now free to chart a new path in the future, as Medina Village is a peaceful spot for mystics now. The prehistory era was never tampered with, and so humans naturally battled and outlived the reptites. In the Middle Ages, Magus, alongside his generals, would continue his plans, though it would lead to his own ruin. Frog continues living his life in quiet isolation, and Robo now enjoys a more relaxed future as the world moves on from a crisis it would never know. After reclaiming the stolen gate key, the group thinks to attack Lavos now in case they ever lose the opportunity again. Quietly winning the day, most people would never know the names and deeds of the group as they continue living their lives with one less threat lurking below. Frog accepts the Masamune, but before heading off to defeat Magus, they all head out to defeat the true threat, Lavos. With the legendary blade in hand, Frog helps cut down the doom for mankind, and after their fierce battle, the group takes a well-earned rest. Before settling in, Frog stands up and heads out, mentioning he has to take care of some business. Venturing on his own to decimate the mystic army under Magus, all foes fall to the mighty Masamune, as he now faces down Magus, who remarks that whoever wins their duel now will rule the world after. Frog doesn't care about any of that, brandishing his blade, as he's only here to settle an old score, and their battle commences with only one side as the victor. With the raw strength of Ayla at their side, the Masamune repaired, and Magus defeated, the group has everything and everyone they need to defeat Lavos now, and succeed in doing so, securing a future for themselves, but not necessarily mankind. The next thing he knows, Crono wakes up to the sound of Lean Bell, as he prepares to enjoy the Millennium Festival. As it turns out, without Ayla to protect them during that time, Azala and the Reptites would succeed in their strike to eradicate the rest of the humans, creating a world where dinosaurs would still rule the Earth. This would create a timeline where Dragonians would rise and cities like Dinopolis would be built, only to be dragged into the events of a future game, Chrono Cross. After the Prophet seals them out of Zeal, the group knows they have to defeat Lavos before the Mammoth Machine is used in the Ocean Palace. Hurrying, they take the fight to Lavos directly to at least stem the damage that can be done to the future, succeeding in at least averting the worst case scenario. Back with Magus, he would go on his own to the Ocean Palace, intent on resuming his plan of defeating Lavos, though he was unsure of his ability to succeed. Back in their own time, Frog sees a statue has been raised in honor of Magus, as the group enjoys the festivities after defeating Lavos on their own. Knowing the future is whatever they make it, they intend to make it a good one. As Shala is called away and passes through a sealed door, the group figures they cannot prevent the Queen's schemes here, but they can at least save humanity, opting to travel on their own to the time of the apocalypse and end Lavos during its awakening. With all that drama over, we now see Marl and Luca review and rate the attractiveness of the many men of the game so far, as Crono now comes out, vocally breaking up the slideshow and hurrying them off to return home. Right before their final confrontation with Lavos, all final checks are made, as when exploring prehistory, the group notices a lost sanctum and decide to explore. They are surprised to find an isolated colony of reptiles living there that actually have had no contact with humans and aren't very strong, clearly having nothing to do with Azala's decimated forces. They are thankful to the group for dealing with some monsters threatening their village, and by helping these reptiles out, the group finds they continue to live in peaceful isolation even into the Middle Ages, even putting up statues in their honor. Across the ages, they've also noticed that multiple dimensional vortexes have opened up in different eras, and investigating, they find they lead to alternate dimensions of this world. As they explore the fractured landscapes and scattered enemies within these seemingly random vortexes, they are shocked to be encountered by shadow versions of themselves that wish to do battle with them, as well as the once lost former king, Dalton. He still begrudges the group robbing him of his chance to rule the world, but after the party defeats him yet again, he declares he now has a way out of the dimensional vortex, and will go south to Pore, raise an army, and come back to crush Guardia. Working together to conquer the vortexes and defeat their shadows, the group discovers new strength within and escape the madness. Returning to the end of time, Gaspar notes there have been odd distortions in time recently, and the bucket that's connected to the Day of Lavos now has something more to it. Some new power from a distant plane far beyond even time's eclipse now lurks. He notices it's a power similar to Lavos, yet there is something else there like a longing or loneliness. He advises caution as the party checks it out, and they find themselves in a pocket dimension where they see another Magus before them, explaining they are now in a future where Lavos has already been defeated. However, if it's a future for a world they come from, he doesn't know, as there are so many potential worlds as there are potential futures for them. What he does know is a new foe has risen in this void of time's eclipse, feasting upon thoughts, dreams, and memories. Other Magus finally finds his sister Shala, now bound to an evolved form of Lavos, but his power is not enough to defeat it. Shala sleeps but has fallen into despair, wanting her end to come and not caring if everything else fades into oblivion too. Other Magus tries to wake her up, but a beam from this new terror, the Dream Devourer, blows him away as the group braces itself for their toughest fight yet. The group puts up a valiant struggle, but the Dream Devourer is simply too strong, blowing them away with a beam as well. Other Magus tries to wake up Shala again, but this time his cries reach her, and she briefly comes to her senses. She regrets to inform them she is trapped and it won't be long before Lavos consumes all of her awareness, and she mostly blames herself, as when she was scattered beyond time after Zeal was lost, the depths of her despair had her wishing for the total erasure of everything too. She says they lack the strength to free her, and raw strength cannot undo her cage, and so she urged them to forget about her, and will help them return to their own time now, sending a party away with her power. To her brother, she thanks Janice for still caring, but she's not the sister he remembers anymore, and wants him to give up, though other Magus still refuses to. Bidding him farewell, she sends him away too, and as he travels, he reflects that he spent his whole life focusing on saving her, and if he has to give that up, then he may as well not exist at all. Cursing himself, he figures that even if that did happen, should something remain, he hopes that it finds a greater purpose than he did. Waking up, he now finds himself with sudden amnesia, not recognizing where he is or who he is, or any of his past. He has the strongest feeling that there was something he needed to do and something he needed to find, but at a loss now, he heads off, seeking to find a way to remember. As time passes for each of them, Lavos would be defeated, the friends would part ways, and celebration would ensue. Crono and Marl will be married in a grand royal wedding attended by many of their friends, including Melchior, as they look forward to a happier future together. In the past, Ayla would also celebrate her marriage to Kino in the prehistory era. In his own time, Magus' curse would lift on him, and Frog would return to being Glenn, though still with a little bit of green on him, accepting a formal knighting in recognition of his heroics. With Luca, she would apply what she's learned from the future and build her own miniature robo, and one day while taking a walk, she would spot a small blonde baby girl by the side of the road, curiously wearing Shala's glowing pendant. Picking up the kid, she opts to take care of it, happy for now but suspecting the consequences of their actions have yet to be seen. After a few short years after their adventure began pass, in 1005 AD, the fall of Guardia would begin, wherein the Masamune would be lost after its use in the bloodshed, and the near future now seems uncertain. Chrono Trigger has enjoyed the success of selling over 3.9 million copies worldwide. Thank you all so much for helping make it to 100 recapitations. I could not have done it without your support, encouragement, and love for these adventures. If you've enjoyed any video of mine, please share it on any site or social media with other fans. It's the best way to support the channel. If you like this and want to buy me a cup of coffee one time a month, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or subscriber on Twitch. Thanks for watching, I'll see you on the next battlefield.